Okay, I think I'll go ahead and kick us off and do some introductions for today. We may have a few people getting in as we go, but I want to make sure we have time to hear Laura's presentation. So hello to everyone. Happy New Year. Hope you had great holidays. I'm Julie Stein, representing the Birmingham Women in Technology leadership team, and we have others on today of the leadership team. And we're pleased today to present this program that we have with Lora Vaughn, who's graciously accepted to talk to us about cybersecurity careers. And that we will take some questions as we go through and some at the end, and we'll do a little bit of wrap up with some future programs. And we've also been doing a survey out to all of our participants and members to try to get input on what they'd like to see us do. We've gotten some feedback, and hopefully we're planning some great opportunities and programs coming up this year to fill some of the requests that we've had through the survey. But I would like to go ahead and present and introduce Lora Vaughn. And Laura is a Senior Director of Security Operations at Fastly. Laura brings over 15 years of cybersecurity experience to her current role, developing solutions to secure Fastly's network. And she joined Fastly from Simmons Bank, where she served as the Chief Information Security Officer and oversaw and supported all the programs that secured the bank systems and data. And Laura has also been an online course instructor through LinkedIn Learning and a seasoned speaker at many cybersecurity events. And she serves as the social media coordinator for the Women in Cybersecurity Professional Affiliate. So there's another organization out there with women interested in cybersecurity. And she also is an adjunct professor at the University of Montevallo. And she holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from Birmingham Southern College, and is a certified information system security professional, CISSP. So with that, I would like to introduce Laura and turn it over to her for her presentation.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the invitation, and I really appreciate your flexibility around needing to reschedule this from back in November. Had some family stuff happen that came up at the last minute, so I do apologize that, but I appreciate the invitation to come back and speak still. So the way I operate, I prefer in-person gatherings because it's a lot easier for me to engage and see what's happening. In this COVID world we're still in, unfortunately, learning how to adapt. So if you have questions or comments, or you want me to address something, please put it in that Q&A window. And Anna has graciously agreed to help moderate with those Q&A points. So if I ask questions, put in a comment there, or anything that comes up, and we'll stop throughout and check in with everyone. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's see if I can actually present the right screen. I redid my office setup last night. Poor choice, given that I was doing this. Oh, hey Anna, I can't share my screen.
All right, let's see if that did it.
There we go. All right. Thank you. All right. So hopefully y'all can see my slide deck now. Good?
Yep, we can see it now.
Great, thank you. All right, so thanks again for inviting me to speak. Julie gave my super long bio and background, so I won't bore you with more. But Fastly, if you're not familiar with us, is a California-based tech company. We make the internet faster by providing content delivery, networking services, and security services to our customers. Why are my slides not moving? Here we go. So, cybersecurity gets a lot of buzz. A lot of that is because there's good reason. There are a lot of things going on in the world that make our computing systems and our networks less secure. When this whole pandemic nonsense started, a lot of us in the security space were scrambling to go, oh, how do we support remote workers in these more traditional networks? So I was at a bank and we said, hey, guess what? Everyone's gonna be remote. We're like, okay. crap, we don't have enough VPN licenses. We don't have the capacity to do this. So we very quickly had to put together, this is how we do remote work securely, quickly, all at once. And some companies did a better job than others. Luckily, I was in a position where we were already prepared to implement some of those things. We just hadn't done it yet. But because of this change, all of our culture has changed, and the need to protect systems, not just inside a traditional castle and moat type of network that has firewalls and intrusion detection, and everyone goes into an office where they plug in and it's safe. It's very different. So that's one of the big drivers in how security is changing today. We all see these ransomware reports, the number of government entities and organizations that keep getting ransomware attacks. If it starts making it into primetime television show as a theme, obviously it's a common occurrence. I think I forget what I was watching, but some medical drama that was on TV and they had a ransomware attack. And I was like, oh, well, I guess that's commonplace enough that it's hitting our mainstream media at even entertainment levels. Cloud platforms. I assume most of y'all have at least some exposure to a cloud platform. Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, GCP. All these different cloud platforms have very unique challenges because we can't control it. We don't have it inside of our network. So what do you do? And each of those is different. And if you're like me, you're in all the clouds because there's an advantage or some use case for each of them, then you got to figure out how do I make sure that all of these things are secure, not just, oh, well, I have AWS, so here's what I need to do. Making sure you've got all of that covered. We still struggle with social engineering. 9 times out of 10, these security breaches happen because a person, they were tricked into doing something. Or one of my favorite social engineering attacks that occurred was in a banking situation. Someone called up and said, hey, this is so-and-so from Western Union. We need you some maintenance on your terminal. Please go to this website. Okay, turn your monitor off and come back in 2 hours and it will be done. And in those 2 hours, they drained a bunch of accounts because that person had access. Social engineering, we can't patch users. Don't know that we want to, but you got to find a way to address those concerns. Other things still hanging around, the Internet of Things. If it's got an IP address, then it potentially poses a security threat. That's still an evolving space. All those systems that were created back in the dark ages before we cared about security, they're still hanging around, or before we knew about some of these attack vectors. Those are a really big threat. That's a hard one to get a hold of. And then data privacy. If you follow a lot of the news, all these different privacy regulations, GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California, there's something coming eventually at a national level in the United States that I think will probably be in the probably next 5 years to say, hey, we all need to standardize and everybody needs to be taking data privacy seriously because it's on a runaway train at this point. So because of all these trends, we have a need for people in the cybersecurity space. If you're interested in the space now, pop something in the chat. I'm just kind of curious on who's actually interested. The bad thing about how I'm set up here is I can't actually see chat and get all of that with the way my screens are set up. So let me see if I can pull it up this way. Haha, there we go. Okay. So a lot of times we've had this image. You watch a movie and it brings up a hacker or a security person. It's some dude in a hoodie in his mom's basement hacking. That's not reality. A lot of the people in the field, like me, don't look like that. And we have a lot of big pushes in the industry and in different companies to push for better diversity, because guess what? All those different points of view and perspectives make a difference in how we do security. Because if we're all thinking the exact same way, we're going to miss so many opportunities to do things better. I don't do just security all the time. I don't go home at the end of the day and hack, even though I work from home. I'm done with my computer at the end of my workday, unless I'm on call, because I want to do other things. In this field, sometimes you are the only woman in the room. Much like in IT, it's an extension of that. Lots of people have these preconceived notions that in order to be good in the cybersecurity space, you got to be some guy who hacks. I'm here to tell you, you don't have to be a dude, and you can do lots of other things. And you don't even have to have a background in computer stuff to be successful in cybersecurity. So you don't have to be a coder or any of that. When I started college, I was in the days when it was really information assurance was the terminology that was used. You know, some of us feel a little older than others on some of that. I've got, you know, kids coming out of school applying for jobs. They're like, what's information assurance? Hurts. But I knew that I wanted to do something in this space. This is really interesting. So I majored in computer science. So I learned all those foundations and took all the networking classes and did lots of fun stuff. My senior capstone project there was installing some tooling to detect illegal music sharing. If you remember those days of LimeWire and Kazaa, it was real popular, real popular. But it was a really cool project. I got to look at all the things going on in the network and take some action. So career-wise, you know, after I graduated, I bounced around a little bit. I will say most time I give this presentation is much more junior level. So I'm going to kind of skip through some of these things, but I did a little bit of everything in the security space. I did some intrusion detection. I did some endpoint security, did some network stuff, did some application security, security information and event monitoring, lots of different things to get this big picture view. As I got into leadership, I ran vulnerability management. I ran a security operations center. I was the CISO, so I ran all the things. And now I run all the operational things for another company. The biggest thing that I learned over time is culture is really important, especially in a field where you're not like all the other people that you work with a lot of times. That if it's always an uphill battle to convince somebody, hey, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. Well, you know, either you need advocates or you need, you know, maybe it's time to move to a different place. I moved around a lot chasing what I thought was the dream job, and culture typically said, man, this sounded like a great opportunity, but it just, I'm miserable. What do I do? So I always like to remind people that remembering that that path to the destination is more of a winding road. Sometimes you go up, you go down, you go sideways. I took a step down from my last job because I wasn't happy in that culture for a number of reasons. But a lot of it had to do with being away from my family, being unable to be there when my mother was dealing with some illnesses and not having my support system. So always remember your career doesn't have to go a certain path. There's a lot of room for improvement there, and a lot of in improvement in our mentality of it. It's not a linear path. Excuse me, I'm recovering from some sinus stuff. So who here has interest in security careers? Like, do you actually know what security jobs look like? One of the common things I find when I engage with people, I'm really interested in security. How do I get my foot in the door? What do I do? What do those jobs look like? And the funny thing is, they're everywhere. If you look at this slide, this is talking about the cyber career areas that come from NIST. That's an initiative out of NIST, talking about career. So the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. This is just a kind of a framework that they created to say, here's all the different things kind of at a topical level that you can do in cyber, and we'll extrapolate from there. So things like user provisioning. Sometimes the user administration in a company is in IT. Sometimes it's in IT security, but it is considered part of security because identity and access management is one of the foundational elements in making sure that we secure our environments. If I can't make sure I know who you are and what you're supposed to access, and make sure you can only access what you're supposed to access, then we have a major security issue. Operate and maintain. This is another one that crosses a lot of different areas, because that could be I'm operating and maintaining a network, which may have security components to it, but at the lowest levels may just be it's a network that needs to be maintained and needs to be up and running. Oversee and govern. So our compliance partners are folks that work in audit, people that help us make sure that we're meeting things like PCI or GLBA, HIPAA. All those regulatory compliance things are really important. And a lot of those people aren't super technical. A lot of these others, protect and defend, analyze, investigate, collect and operate, you're getting more into the technical areas there. Each of these fields is huge, and depending on a company or wherever you end up, may have little bits and different pieces of each of these areas in a particular role. So if you go to this NIST website where you're looking at the NIST framework, this is a really good way to get a feel for where do I fit in the picture. If you're not coming from a cybersecurity background, then maybe you go, I don't really know where I fit. I don't know what those jobs are. This is a really great tool to help you get an idea of what some of those opportunities are. There are a lot of people with the legal backgrounds getting into the security space because all of the ramifications around what happens if you have a breach, what data is exposed, what are our obligations, what do we need to do? Those are all such big topics. So that's a non-traditional path. And I hear people talk about, I'm interested in security, but I'm not technical. That's an opportunity right there. Training and awareness, education, there are a lot of opportunities there. It's another less technical pathway. When it comes to the analysis side, that's another one of those areas that sometimes, being able to analyze and put lots of different pieces together is challenging and really interesting work, but isn't necessarily the best skill set of someone who came up from a programming background. So you don't always have to have those hardcore technical backgrounds to find something that is interesting. A lot of things, we can code a solution to a lot of things. We can put a technology in front of something to mitigate a risk. But at the end of the day, you still have people and process that have to be handled. And that's one of the things that I increasingly see with the diversity in the workplace in cyber careers is most of us who may have a different viewpoint than everybody else that's on that hardcore technical track, look at things and go, hey, this is a bigger problem than just putting a piece of software in place. This is one of the biggest things I've seen a lot of people bring in that are new into the field is, let's put some process around this. Let's fix the process so that we don't keep having the same thing happen over and over again, or we at least do it the same way every time. Those technical skills, don't be discouraged if people go, oh, look, are you a coder? No? Oh, you can't be in this job. Or whatever technical word. Don't let that be a deterrent. At the same time, don't go, well, I'm not that technical in that self-deprecating manner. I've seen so many people, a lot more women than men in that space, but go, I'm not that technical, as kind of a self-deprecating thing. Stop that if you're in that position, because you're shooting yourself in the foot. Everyone brings something to the table in these broader career fields. And that's not just for security, that's for everybody. One of my favorite stories is about one of my former employees. She came into the team from an acquisition of another company, and her bachelor's degree was in linguistics. But her knack for putting together pieces of really complicated puzzles and figuring out how to pull things together and make sense out of them was amazing. So that non-traditional background was a huge benefit. No one else could see what she saw. And play to your strengths and just figure out how to make them fit into what those opportunities are. One other thing to look at is this cybersecurity career pathway. I encourage you to go to this link, cyberseek.org. You can click around. So if you're in IT already and you are a network administrator, you can look at other opportunities there. So that is also a thing. I see the comment from Justin about don't forget about sales. Sales is another really great area that is one I tend to forget because while I work for a technology company that has sales, I'm on the back end. I don't do a lot of engagement with those sales teams, but that's a really big area and it can be a very profitable area from a financial rewards perspective. Back to the cybersecurity career pathway. This is just a cool thing where you go, hey, if I start here, what are some of the things I could do next? I encourage you to go take a look at that link. It's really a cool thing to look at. And if you have questions, find me on LinkedIn, message me. I think I have my email at the end of this, and if not, I will share it. But there are really great opportunities. And if you're like, I think I could do this, a lot of times you could, and it may just need a little bit of mentorship, or maybe you just need someone as a sounding board. definitely check it out because we need more people. We can't hire fast enough. I'm going to have a number of positions this year, and it is so hard to find people who bridge some of these gaps of technical skills and the soft skills or process skills or other non-traditional skills that want to be in the field. And it's really rewarding if you can come in and just hit the ground and learn this stuff. So let's talk a little bit about some of those job types. Oh, now I've lost the ability to go to the next slide. There we go. So what is in a name? So we'll throw up in the chat. I've actually got the chat window up now so I can see it. You know, if you just have a comment or a note, I'm watching that there. If you look at a job posting, sometimes, do you know the difference between an engineer, an analyst, an architect? Sometimes these names are ridiculous. Yeah, shameless puppy picture because Daisy looks confused because she gives the most awesome head tilts. Sometimes I look at job descriptions and I go, what? I don't know what that means. So in general, most of you who may have been in IT for a while know that some of these job titles are just HR titles that we end up having to use and sometimes don't make a lot of sense. So always read the description. Caveat on that, if you work at some larger organizations, there's one here in town I used to work for that you had this boilerplate template of the job description that you couldn't change, but you had this extra stuff, and that's where all the meat of what we were looking for was. So always read those job descriptions. But in general, you know, your engineers are doing things hands-on. Your analysts are typically analyzing data or analyzing systems and maybe building approaches to fixing it. And architects tend to be a higher level, looking at more holistic problems and building solutions to those. But again, read those job descriptions because sometimes what the title looks like isn't actually what it is. Cautionary tale, just you never know. From a career leveling perspective, again, a lot of this, when I give this talk, is focused more on those entry-level roles. And if you're not in security, this applies as well on a career changer path. So some of the roles that may make sense coming in as a career changer can come in at this things like security operations center analysts. You know, a SOC analyst is a really cool place to get your feet wet and kind of get an understanding of all the different areas of security. It's one of the few places in a security team where you'll see a little bit of everything. It's because you're monitoring all the alerts that are coming from all the different systems. It's one of the places that I point a lot of entry-level people to, especially if they don't have a lot of background or don't really know what they want to do. Go there and see if you can figure it out. In my former life, I've used that as a training ground, a place to say, hey, y'all should, you're doing a really great job in this particular area. Maybe that'd be a good fit for you to go to this team as or consider that as your next path. Threat intelligence analysts. Threat intelligence is its own special animal, and it's more cross-functional. It's not as technical. You need to understand some technical work, but threat intelligence analysts are a lot of times collating data and putting things together and pulling out pieces of information and figuring out how to use them. A security analyst or engineer could be an information security analyst, cybersecurity analyst or engineer. Those terms sometimes are interchangeable depending on the company. But those are job titles to target if you're looking at a job search. Same thing, that information assurance analyst and information assurance engineer. I see that one pop up every now and then. It's typically more in government roles. Those are starting to be few and far between. Most of those tend to be on the defensive side. So doing things like vulnerability management or internal assurance activities, like making sure that all your systems meet a baseline requirement. And then that identity and access management roles. Again, those may not be in security always, but those are typically going to be areas where you can come in with lesser technical knowledge or lesser detailed knowledge and find a role and potentially be able to pivot into something that's different down the road. Anyone have any questions about any of these? Y'all are quiet. It seems like we might have a relatively small group, but I'm definitely want to hear from y'all. So one of the things I like to bring up when it comes to security, and I think this is true in IT, so those of you who are already working in the field probably know this, but company size has major impacts on your career and what you can do and everything. So if you're working in a small company that says, hey, we need to take security seriously, well, you might end up doing a whole lot of different security things. You're probably going to be across all those different NIST categories. You might have a less mature program. That's not always the situation, but it's more common because it's a smaller company. That means there's fewer budget dollars typically, and not as many resources to throw at building a program. But it's a really great way to pick up skills in new and different areas. So if you have a security team that's 2 people, you're going to learn a whole lot. Now you go to a large company, like a Fortune 500 company or anything that's got probably 1,000 employees, maybe more than 500, depends on the company and all that. But a large IT presence and a large security presence, you get much more siloed. So you end up in this scenario where, hey, I'm running the antivirus software and anti-malware software on this environment, and that's what you do. And sometimes you get stuck in that little area and it's harder to figure out, well, what else might I like? What else is interesting? Those closely defined roles and silos of responsibility can backfire if you're not careful. But the opportunities are really great. Hopefully you have the ability to cross-train, or you can do some shadowing and things. I know in former roles, that was something I was really trying to build out, was to say, hey, you're on the security team. What do you want to do next? Always having those conversations with your leadership and your management to say, hey, I don't want to just be this low-level tech for a while. I don't want to be the web filtering person forever. I was there. That's a pretty thankless job. It was terrible. And it's like, hey, how do I do other things? What else can I do to make myself valuable and to be able to move to different areas or move up? So remembering that there are trade-offs in those scenarios. The biggest advantage on those large companies, though, is you're typically going to see more exposure to new and interesting technologies, just because most of those larger companies are going to have some regulatory compliance that they need to be following. And that, unfortunately, nature of the beast drives a lot of our security policies and approaches. Just a few little reminders on landing the job. Make sure you research the job for sure. Anytime I interview somebody and they are like, so what does this job do again? That's a little, that's rough. Make sure you're searching your network. If you know someone who works there or used to work there, reach out to them, hit them up. Do some new search, see if there's anything new, especially if you're in a space like I am in the tech industry. Are there any recently announced mergers and acquisitions, major announcements, leadership changes, things that might be interesting? Look at investor relations. If you're dealing with a publicly traded company, those are always really good things to do. Make sure you understand what you're coming into. And for the more junior level folks, mock interviews, especially if you're in school and your university does mock interviews, do them. Tune up your elevator pitch. If you're looking for a security job, what are you going to do if you happen to be sitting next to somebody at a sports event or in an elevator, and it comes up that, oh, well, I'm Laura. I run security operations for Fastly. But oh, I've always wanted to go into security. What do you say? Keep that elevator pitch tuned, because you never know who you're going to meet, who you can network with, and what those connections could be. There have been so many times I'll overhear someone talking about, well, I'm not sure what I want to do next. Well, what are you interested in? Because a lot of us have gotten here because of the help of other people, and we want to give back. So make sure you're ready to put that little spiel out there so you can get that connection and maybe end up with a job you want. Don't forget, in interviews, silence is okay. The number of times I've had candidates recently, I've been interviewing a lot in the last couple of weeks. And some people they get nervous and they just keep talking. Don't forget, you can be quiet and be an active listener. Don't miss the questions they're asking you because you're so focused on how you're going to respond. That's another thing I keep seeing. So, if you're coming into a security interview, you may be given a scenario of, hey, if this happened, where would you look to see if there was something going on? Ask more questions. Sometimes they give you such a broad question to see where your mind goes. That's how I operate. Hey, if we had an alert on this system here, where would you start researching? Well, what do I have available? Make it a back and forth. Be an active listener and an active participant. Of course, once you've gotten the job, obviously work hard. Again, this is geared more towards my entry-level folks, but don't be afraid to ask questions. I've seen a lot of people, you're coming from a different background, or you're new to the company, or you're just new to working. There's that fear of asking questions because we don't want to look silly. We don't want to look like we don't know what we're doing. But asking questions is one of those things that we've got to get over that fear, so that we can continue to learn and grow and do a great job. And that shows that you're working hard, because it's like, hey, I think I get this, but could you clarify on this one point for me? Make sure you're speaking up for yourself. I know a lot of us I tend to sit back and be quiet and just kind of listen. I tend to listen and observe and kind of pull in all the information before I make any judgment calls or make any recommendations. Don't be afraid to speak up, though, when you do have those contributions. The biggest thing I've got to give as a recommendation is keeping a brag book, because we're in annual review cycles. I know a lot of people do that this time of year. If you keep a brag book of all the accomplishments and things you've achieved, your wins, all the little notes, thank you notes and things like that, that will help you so much, not just from a development and a growth perspective to say, hey, I did this. So when it comes to annual review time next year, you're prepared with your list of all the things you did. But those days you're like, man, I feel like I'm not actually doing anything. I haven't made any progress. What am I doing here? That brag book can really help you. And the corollary on that is keeping your resume up to date, because you never know when that dream job might just show up. And if you don't apply then, you may miss out on a great opportunity. So I do see we have one question. Here is my contact information. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter. That's my personal email. So it doesn't get lost in my work email, because I have not figured out how to manage Google Mail for corporations. It's like, I don't understand it. I put a filter and things just do not act the way I expect them to. So if you have tips on that, I'd love to hear them. But I do see a question was, what soft or process skills do you find pair well with more technical security oriented skills you might need for a cybersecurity job? So one of the biggest things is project management. I think everybody in IT struggles with this one, to be perfectly honest. It is absolutely insane that you get into this big project and we don't know how to break it down into small enough pieces to actually accomplish things. So when I came into my current organization, said, hey, we've been working on getting this particular software installed for 2 years. 2 years. Okay, where's your project plan? What project plan? Oh, that explains a lot. Cool. Let's work on a project plan. Project planning will never hurt you. I personally took the PMP training because I wanted to be better at planning, estimating, and making sure I understand how to do a better job of making things happen. So being organized and project planning is a really big one. So there's a huge need for project and program managers in the security space. If you can pivot into that field, that is fantastic. Other non-technical soft skills, communication. A lot of people, if you love office space, like I do, you have your manager, your middle manager who translates from the developers to the non-developers. That's a real scenario, because sometimes people don't understand the technical stuff, or you're telling them more technical detail than they need to know. So having the ability to read a situation and say, hey, I get you're asking about this particular thing. What do you need to know? What level of granularity are you looking for? And trying to translate it into a level that works for them and makes sense to them, engaging that they're comprehending it. Personal organization is huge, especially as we get to this place where jobs are anywhere. Like I said, my team is global. I got people all over the world. We're not micromanaging there. So being able to be a self-starter and self-directed, having that curiosity to go look, hey, I see that there's something that is not quite right or might look interesting. I should go look at this and then bring it up. Those are all really good soft skills to come into this security space and help drive things and get you into that area. I hope that answers that question pretty well. Anything else?
Yeah, when you're interviewing candidates, what are some critical strengths that you would look for to hire somebody?
That's a really good one. So, interviewing candidates is always a challenge. Where I work, we have a longer process than most, which is a blessing and a curse. But in my initial screening, when I'm hiring, I'm getting ready to hire for an offensive security engineer. So I'm going to be looking for cultural fit a little bit to say, hey, tell me about a team project you've been involved in. What was your role? How do you play with other people? I want to kind of get a story from you that says, oh, well, there was this project and we were all kind of disorganized, and I went and I partnered and we set up some meetings and how that happened. Getting a feel there. Understanding technical background, depending on the role, is obviously part of that interview process. But I'm more interested in, well, what's the most interesting security project you've worked on? That's one of my favorite questions, because you never know what you're going to get on that. It could be this. I interviewed someone the other day that came back with, well, it was around this Log4j vulnerability that just hit us all back in December, but it wasn't because of the security part of it. It was because the process. And I found that there was this weird thing in our CI/CD pipeline that was making it so we couldn't fix something. So we went and found another issue that we had to go back and fix. Those are really good things to talk through because it shows a breadth and a big picture view. Again, I'm typically hiring for higher level senior candidates. Whenever I'm looking at a more junior person or someone who may be changing careers, coming junior to mid-level, it may be more around your ability to follow processes. Tell me about a time you built a process to handle something. What is your thought process around that? I really want to understand kind of how you think about things, because a lot of people can learn security. They can learn the technical aspects. But if you don't have that innate curiosity and that innate desire to learn and figure things out, that's a much harder thing for me to get you into a really meaningful role and being a valuable member of my team. All right, so question about how could someone with a lack of technical skills get involved in cybersecurity space? Great question. So first up, check out all the local organizations in cybersecurity. So I will plug for the Central Alabama affiliate of the Women in Cybersecurity organization. There is an event tomorrow. It's hybrid, virtual, and I think on location at McLeod offices over in Inverness. That's a really great place to network and come join us. Joining ISSA, Information Systems Security Association professionals, that's another good one. Networking, just showing up, asking questions. If you're in a technology role in a company and someone's doing security stuff and you're friends with them, ask about it. Hey, I'm really interested in this. Most of us see that we need help. We need more people. Especially if you are a rock star at what you do and you're interested in coming over and joining us on the dark side of security, come on, we want you. So we're going to be very happy to help there. Thanks, Justin, for adding that link to the ISSA chapter. LinkedIn connections can be helpful. I would encourage you to do that more around people in person. Good rule of thumb, if you don't actually know them in person, connecting with them and reaching out may not be as successful. But if you can tell a compelling story, hey, I really admired what you did here. I heard you speak at this thing and I just would love your feedback. You might luck out. In general, connecting with more people who are in the field, especially locally, and as we get back to doing more of these in-person events, is never going to hurt you. And I'd really encourage you to get those one-on-one relationships. I know that's not the technical skills. Now, if you're coming from a technical background, there are a lot of certifications you can pursue. So if you're a network person, go for a Network Plus. Then go look at Security Plus or some of those certifications that come from CompTIA. Those are really great ways to learn a little bit and show that you have a desire to learn and grow and get into the field. In general, we can learn these more technical things. Bug bounties are actually a really cool way to learn about security. If you have that interest, you can go tinker and go after a company. Most companies like Fastly, we have a program where you can report vulnerabilities to us, things that you find. And that's a way to kind of learn about it. And we've seen things where, man, this person's really interesting, and they apply for a job like, oh, hey, they're already finding issues with our stuff for us. That's really cool. Oh, great. There's a bug bounty presentation coming up at the ISSA meeting next Thursday. So all of these different networking things can help. ISSA does some training. ISACA, I think, sometimes does training as well. If you have something like LinkedIn Learning, Cybrary, or any of those million online training platforms, use them. Look for those classes, find things that look like they're interesting to you, and take a look. Let's see, looking at the questions here. Had a question about security assessment criteria for measuring effectiveness of security controls. That is a whole separate topic in and of itself. I don't want to tie up anyone for much longer on this. I would suggest looking at some of the assessment frameworks and using things like NIST, CSF, or 853 or whatever. So any other questions? Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for the invitation. Like I said, find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and email there. Look forward to hearing from you all, and maybe showing up to an in-person event in the future.